Yo, what up, Toshi here? It's been a hot minute. How are you doing? I hope you've been well. You're probably not doing well, actually, now that I think about it, because we have a lot upcoming in the 3.2 anniversary patch for Honkai Star Rail. There is a bunch of characters you're going to want to roll for, and there is a bunch of upcoming characters in the following patch that doesn't make things better whatsoever. We're going to talk about all those characters and who you should roll for in this specific patch. And one more thing I want to mention before we do actually get into the video is that we still have the fake collab on the horizon. So with that being said, you should be a little careful with how much currency you're using in this patch. We are getting a lot of pulls, but again, you might want to save your currency. Anaxa. This character is extremely valuable because the Herda is broken. Having another Rudition character in your team alongside Herda not only batteries this character, but also increases the damage of that other Erudition character. So in a team alongside the Herda, you have two damage dealers, much like the Topaz and other main damage dealer team comp back in the day. But this team is much better because it's AoE in AoE-centric meta. It's just all around better. And Anaxa is a character that does not have much, if any, fall off in single target scenarios. So with that being said, why not would you roll for Anaxa? He's meta defining, and he's extremely good outside of the meta teams. Now I know what you might be thinking, Toshi, I already have Jade, and Jade is a very strong character to use alongside my Herda. So I don't need to have another character that is going to fulfill the same role as Jade. Without a doubt, Anaxa is going to be a better version of Jade for the already pre-existing team comp alongside the Herda. And one more thing to take into consideration is that his raw damage is just higher because he is a newer character. This is 3.0 we're talking about now. Now, what makes Anaxa so grand spanking good alongside the Herda is more than just the damage he puts out. It's the fact that he's able to put every single weakness onto the enemy, which means in a team alongside the Herda, he is going to allow your Herda to dish out even more damage. Because the enemy having the weakness type that you want to bring to the fight is going to allow this character to dish out more damage. In this case, ice damage. And one more thing to take into consideration is that this character, Anaxa, is able to permanently enable the quantum set because he puts the weakness type onto the enemy permanently, which means you're now able to use the quantum set on every single character you slot in the same team alongside him. He is a better version of Sora Wolf. You get 20% defense ignore. That is extremely valuable for your overall DPS. But further, if you are looking to boost the power of your Herda teams, I would definitely look into getting Anaxa because he's going to be the best character you can have alongside this already broken, meta-defining damage dealer. And I don't think it's a unsafe investment because obviously we have a ton of power creep in Honkai Star right now, and you might be wondering whether or not getting Anaxa now is going to maybe brick your account later on because of the levels of power creep we have in Honkai Star Rail, and maybe you think the Herda will fall off at some point in time. I'm going to tell you this. This character right here is extremely strong in AoE, the best AoE character in the game right now, and extremely competitive in single target. He is better than single target damage dealers in single target scenarios. I don't see this character falling off anytime soon. The crazy part about the Herda is that she also increases the crit damage of the allies on a team. And Anaxa also increases the crit damage of the allies as well. Not only are you buffing up the damage of your main damage dealer, in this case the Herda, you're also buffing up the damage of Tribi. And Tribi is absolutely insane in the current Honkai Star meta because this character not only thrives off of you doing more attacks because this character gets more energy, but also you just dish out even more damage with the character because she is a crit-based harmony character. Let that sink in. A crit-based harmony character, which is different from the traditional harmony characters that scaled off a crit damage but did no damage. So that means Jade now has less value in Honkai Star Rail, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, you can slot this character onto a secondary team. I like to use the Jade in a solo team with Sparkle for Pure Fiction, and it works out pretty well. As for Lycone choices, you really don't have too many options in the Path of Erudition, other than using Lycones you've already leveled up for your Path of Erudition characters. So Genius Repose is always a decent option. You get a ton of attack, and you get crit damage whenever you defeat a enemy. And then the Seriousness of Breakfast is always a good light cone overall to use if you don't have anything else on your account. But we do have more erudition light cones. They're just the ones from the Herda shop. The Data Cosmos Fell is going to be very nice for Anaxa because you're going to be giving the enemies the weakness type present at all times. And even if you kill one of the enemies and now there's only one enemy left on the field, you still have that crit damage boost lasting for more than one turn, which means you kill the enemy and start the next wave, or the enemy then throws out mobs additionally, which will allow you to stack this light cone again. But maybe Anaxa is not your cup of tea. Well, the next character might be, because this character is going to also be meta-defining. Now, I know. I made tons of videos on Castorice because, for one, I love quantum characters. Quantum is my favorite element in all of Honkai Star Rail. This has been established ever since the days of Solarwolf being a good character to use. And Solarwolf is not so much a good character anymore. But you know who's going to be a good character? Probably even great, to be honest, is Castorice. And the reason why is because she is absolutely loaded as a DPS character. Now, I've made this meme tons of time where I say, wow, she's a DPS character, by the way. Because she quite literally does stuff that no DPS character should ever do. She has an AoE revive for the team. That's insane. Now, obviously, the criteria for meeting this AoE revive, you have to heal or shield your allies. Giving a DPS character an AoE revive, while also allowing you to use it no matter where the character is slotted into your team comps, is insane. It is extremely valuable, and I can't believe they seriously gave this to a DPS character. Now, one of Castorice's best teammates is no other than Tribby. Even if you don't have the first Eidolon for this character, Tribby is still best in the slot. And the reason why is because not only is Tribby Quantum, so she is nice against the enemies that are also Quantum that Castorice will be attacking, but Tribby gets a ton of energy off of Castorice doing constant AoE hits. Let's not forget that this character also has a ton of HP, which means the HP drain that Castorice will be doing makes it all the more valuable. This is also the first time where Luocha is now best in slot. At the time of you watching this video, I literally got news that we are now getting a free potential Luocha or Ruame, depending on the character you choose, of course. That's crazy. So this changes everything quite literally. You can just pick Luocha and pair that along with your Castorice if you don't plan on going for highest sign later down the line. Kind of weird I'm saying that after, well, it felt like a year and a half. Probably longer than a year and a half. The only other team where Luocha has been best in slot is Denhang and Bibitu, and that was before Huo released. Now, he has a team where he's actually the best character you could use. And the reason why is because Castorice quite literally just needs one thing: heals. So she's much like Furina from Genshin Impact, which I plan on doing a video on this because I think the concept of this character is very interesting, and the correlation between Furina and Castorice is also very interesting. I do like that dynamic. But let's say you don't have Luocha. There is tons of other defensive options you can use alongside Castorice in the team comp. Any defensive option that has healing in their kit is very valuable alongside this character. And after the last few beta changes to Castorice, characters like Fugue that wasn't supposed to really work before work pretty decently. That means a character like Fugue that has heals whenever she is below 50% HP, and then she gets the reset with her passive for her HP, and then also healing the team with the AoE on her ult, gives a ton of healing that Castorice needs towards her ultimate passive. And then Gallagher is just a ton of healing when you're attacking the enemies that has the Besotted debuff. And then let's not forget that Bailu is a character that has a ton of sources of healing for the team. You have your elemental skill, you have your ultimate, and you have a freaking passive that allows you to heal whenever you're attacked by the enemy. So that means if you're fighting an enemy that has a bunch of AoE hits, you're going to constantly heal the team with Bailu. I think Bailu is an amazing defensive option to use. You also take less damage when you have that buff on your characters. And the one thing that Bailu can't do is keep the team cleansed. Well, Gallagher has a cleanse, Fugue has a team-wide cleanse, and Luocha has a cleanse on his skill that also does have a passive attached to it whenever you reach a certain HP threshold. So that's where Bailu is going to become a character where you might find yourself not wanting to use. But when there's no CC, oh man, this character is going to absolutely thrive. And the revive alongside Castorice's revive is an interesting mechanic to also think about. But hey, remember the good old days where you could use Bronya alongside Bailu, and you would essentially have a cleanse for your hypercarry damage dealer, and that was a nice combination to use for those hypercarry comps back in the day, where we didn't have very many defensive options in place of Bailu. He was the best defensive option we had. Well, now Sunday has a cleanse, and he's also able to push up the summon as well alongside the damage dealer. So he's really nice with Castorice for not only the cleanse for Bailu's non-cleanse, but also he's nice with characters again with summons. But if you really want to make a super budget free-to-play team for Castorice, because you are either new or you don't have very many options on your already existing account, well, you have a team consisting of 2 4-stars, both of which you can get for free in various events the game does throw at you, who may end up being on Castorice's banner also. And then you have the Remembrance main character, who you get for free in the early launch of 3.0. This team is the most free-to-play friendly team I've ever seen in Honkai Star Rail, and I'm not even kidding. I've been around with Kafka dot teams, I've been around the Quantum teams, I've been around the teams with Break. This team right here only features 1 5-star character, with that being Castorice. Every other character here is a lot easier to obtain than Ruan Mei if you don't have the character, which is not present on any banner. So in my opinion, Castorice is one of the best characters to happen to Honkai Star Rail. It just sucks that this is the character that ends up having the sort of passive that could end up shaping the future of the game, right? So it is a little bit worrisome when we're talking about the balance of the game long term. Although I do believe the balance is already in the gutter. So for me personally, I'll be honest with you all, I don't really care. Never really cared, didn't care. I just think it's crazy that a DPS character is getting a revive. That is what is insane to me. They took away my Fugue's E2 and gave it to Castorice. Absolutely insane. Oh, and if you have Maide, well, now you have a character that also works alongside Castorice, because she functions in dual DPS teams. Thanks to her joint attack and the siphon of high HP allies, Maide is a very solid character to use alongside her. I just don't happen to have this character on my account. Now, when I said free-to-play friendly, I was not talking about Lycones whatsoever, because Castorice quite literally has no Lycone options for free-to-play, really. The only option you have is Reminiscence. This increases the damage dealt, but that's it. It's a 3-star Lycone. You're missing out on a ton of HP, which means for Castorice, that is a huge DPS loss. And the reason why this matters more for HP scalers than attack scalers is because HP scalers don't have any other way of increasing their overall HP aside from characters like Fujuan and Lynx. Very few and far in between compared to attack boosters we have in the game, right? Robin, Tingyun, Bronya, and way more attack boosting characters in the game. You also have other ways of increasing your attack, like light cones. For instance, the 5-star signature light cone of Himiko increases the attack of Erudition characters for just having enemies on the field. There isn't anything like that for HP scalers, and Castorice is going to find herself having a massive damage fall off if you don't have any premium options for the character in terms of light cone. So it's either go premium or go home. And unfortunately, this light cone is a paid battle pass light cone. But that's not to say that Castorice won't have options later down the line. She most definitely will have an option somewhere later down the line. It just sucks that as of right now, there isn't really much you can do if you are free to play. And the last thing I want to mention is that we are currently in a quantum meta. That means any quantum character like Jade, Tribi, even Fujuan will find a lot of value alongside Castorice. Jade is also a character that works well because she is a sub DPS of sorts. You give a ton of speed to Castorice, but you'll also do a ton of follow-up attacks because Castorice has a lot of sources of AoE damage, which is going to constantly stack Jade's passive, and pair these two together in pure fiction. Oh my gosh. You're going to clear the content without even sweating. Well, maybe you'll sweat if you don't have a present defensive option, because your HP is going to be draining pretty darn quick. But you'll be killing enemies before they kill you. That's the best part. I can go on and on and on about Castorice because I quite literally love quantum characters. The last thing I'll leave you off with is, how is Castorice compared to the Herda? Well, the Herda is so powerful and so easy to use This character quite literally thrives in every scenario without any sweat whatsoever. I use this character for everything in the game currently because she's just that easy to use and that auto-friendly. Castorice isn't necessarily an auto-friendly character like the Herda. In fact, she's the quite opposite. She's a character you don't want to use in auto. She's a character that is a lot more clunkier to use based on the fact that she drains your HP. So you're forced to run a certain team comp centered around having a defensive option present. Sometimes you don't even need a defensive option for characters like the Herda. And we're talking about higher ends of play, right? So players that are a lot more competitive in the game. So her damage ceiling is not as high as the Herda because you have to use a defensive option, which is going to lower your overall DPS. Castorice is a character that is shaping up to be a character that is later down the line going to be a lot more useful than she is right now. Once we get more characters like Maide, she's going to feel pretty darn great to use. And I'm super excited to follow up with this character in the future meta. And I got to give Hoyoverse credit where credit is not due. They suck. Because the fact that we can't even use the quantum set on this character is ridiculous. We know why we can't use the quantum set. Because if we were to use the quantum set, that means that she would have less value in her signature light cone because you'll have defense ignore from this set. Obviously, it does stack with her light cone. You're not able to get the passive of this because the summon does not count alongside the passive. It has to say that this applies to the Memorspite or summon as well, and it doesn't. And they didn't bother even changing the set to allow you to use it alongside your summon or Memorspite. Because Hoyoverse is scummy. Absolutely scummy. I hate them. I do. I do hate Hoyoverse. This is why I hate them. Because I farmed this set so much that I have amazing pieces that I will never be able to use on Castorice. Now we have Bigger Ting Yun, and I actually do not have Bigger Ting Yun on my account, Fugue. The reason I don't have Fugue is because around that point in time in Honkai Star, I was extremely burned out, and I actually stopped playing the game. And Fugue is a character that is super nice for the Super Break teams, especially the Rappa teams, because she allows you to break the enemies without having that specific designated weakness on the enemies, which means characters like Rappa that don't have any way of implanting weaknesses onto the enemy finds value from Fugue. But other than that, I really don't think she's a character that you should roll for in your account. Because much like JQ, who we'll go over in just a second, she really only has value in those break teams. And break as of right now is, in my opinion, aside from Rappa, starting to fall out of the meta. Because the team has already hit a theoretical ceiling in terms of damage, and now we have teams that are going back to crit-based damage, which means that damage is theoretically higher because you have not only more ways of amplifying the damage in terms of crit damage and then just other stats in general. So unfortunately, I really cannot I don't think anyone should be rolling for Fugue unless you like the design of the character, or you're like me and you're Rappa main and you don't already have the character. I probably will be trying to snipe this character because I use Rappa all the time. I love Rappa. What makes Fugue also really good is that you can slot your Ruan Mei in a different team because she will take the place of Ruan Mei, allowing you to break the enemies quicker, which means you'll have more uptime on those broken enemies and be able to do your super break damage. Well, you don't necessarily need to have 2 break teams anymore in Honkai Star Rail, because as of right now, we have other present teams that are very nice for AoE contents, honestly better than those break teams in those AoE contents. I think Rappa is really good as of right now, because she is being hard shielded in the current in-game contents, and all 3 contents in the game. If she wasn't shielded as hard as she is right now, she really wouldn't be as good to use as the other AoE-based teams. And again, take this as someone who absolutely adores Rappa. Again, my favorite character in the current game. I just don't think that you should work towards investing on this character, because at a certain point, she's just going to fall out of the meta. And the same goes for Firefly. And what I find funny about the Firefly and Castorice situation is that Castorice is now the new best girl of Honkai Star Rail. Firefly is no longer that girl. But if I'm being honest, break teams are not worth investing too much anymore. And that's because we're moving towards a different meta Honkai Star Rail. I'm not going to talk about Fugue anymore. The character is what it is. If you have Rappa and you want to use Rappa in more contents and be more consistent with it, then you can go for Fugue. But other than that, I don't recommend the character whatsoever. Acheron. I could save you time and say that Acheron fell off, and she kind of did fall off. But to be fair, she's a character that has been locked behind having Nihility characters on her team. And well, if you don't have some of those newer premium, not necessarily newer, but premium options in terms of Nihility characters, she feels pretty dang bad to use. I already think she's still underwhelming in the current meta, even with those premium Nihility characters such as JQ, who is currently present on the Raid Up banner. I just don't think this character is worth rolling for anymore. I don't even think rolling for dupes of this character is worth it anymore. Because now characters like the Herda have a higher theoretical damage ceiling, while also, get this, being more flexible to use with characters. And if you like Acheron's design overall, then go for it. I just don't think it's worth investing into prior DPS characters in Honkai Star Rail, because these characters have been power crept. And the reason how I can tell whether or not a character has been power crept is whether or not Zero Cycle team is able to make the team competitive to already established high-end meta teams in the game. So for instance, Acheron's Zero Cycle team, featuring Sunday, Robin, and JQ, E2 Acheron. Or E0 is fine, right? But E2 Acheron makes this team even better. And the reason why a team like this works is because since the character's damage is already a lot lower compared to the already broken meta defining characters in the game present right now, you are then not only forced to use another buffer character to make up for the damage difference compared to the other characters in the game that deal more damage, but also that's your only way of clearing the content without struggling to do so. So in that last slot, you would use JQ, who is again present on the Raid Up banner. But to me, that sounds like a ton of investment to make one character work. And I just don't think you should invest into Acheron or invest into a character that was made for Acheron. That's just my 2 cents though. And since we've already touched bases on JQ, I don't think we really need to talk about that character either. Because he is quite literally just here for Acheron. Not story-based, but kit and design-wise. He is just here for Acheron. I already think that Acheron is not that crazy in single target. And, well, if the game ever moves to a single target-based meta, she'll fall off the hardest. Last but not least, Dr. Ratio. What an interesting character to throw into the current mix of the characters in Honkai Star Rail. He's a hunt character. Kind of weird, right? Considering we are in an AoE-eccentric meta. His single target damage is alright. I mean, the enemies have so much HP nowadays that it feels like his damage is most certainly a relic of the past. Fei Zhao does everything this character wants to do but better. Now, that's not to say that this character is bad. He was just given to us for free at a certain point in Honkai Star Rail. And with all things due considered, he came out before 2.0. So yeah, this character has been endlessly power crept by future characters. I don't think you should ever consider going for any investment on this character, not even his light cone, because that is a steep investment for a character. Again, if you are a meta-centric player, that you could have just used for other characters that will have more value on your account in the current immediate game. So there's a light cone of Anaxa, or a light cone of Castorice, or flat out getting another character instead of a light cone altogether. I just think investing into this character is one of the worst decisions you can do for your account. And I mean this with the utmost certainty. Now, I will say, as someone who has used this character tons and tons and tons in the past, made a tons of videos with him, featured alongside Topaz and Robin Aventurine, he is quite literally fun to use. Definitely one of the most fun characters to use because his team comp is extremely fun. But I wouldn't be kidding you guys if I didn't tell you that I don't use this character anymore, because if I ever want to use a character in the follow-up team, I'm probably using Fei Zhao, because she is a lot better to use, helps me clear the contents, and it just synergizes so much better with Topaz in my honest opinion. Now, I mean E0 Topaz. E0 Topaz with Dr. Ratio is mid. Eventually made it a lot better, but it's mid. Whereas Fei Zhao doesn't need that debuff requirement to dish out damage. So again, you can roll for him if you want, just understand that you are essentially fighting an uphill battle. And in terms of team comps, this is quite literally his only and best team comp you can use in the game. It is the follow-up attack team. Now, if you don't have Aventurine, for instance, you can use Lingsha. Lingsha is good, right? Because she has a follow-up attack in her kit, which makes her nice to use alongside Topaz and Robin. But let's say you don't have Lingsha either. Well, then you're kind of out of luck, because then your defensive options are a lot less optimal. And not only that, but also your damage in the team is less because you're not giving a crit damage dealt on the enemy to your team. And you're also not giving damage to the overall team damage, because Venturine does deal quite a decent amount of damage if you have them built on a damage-oriented build. So overall, just be careful thinking about growing for this character and investing into him further, much like Acheron and Jiaoqiu, because these characters have been outclassed in the current edition of Honkai Star Rail. But really, I didn't mean to sound doom and gloom for the second half of this video. It just so happens that Honkai Star Rail is a much more different Honkai Star Rail than what Honkai Star Rail was a year ago, a year and a half ago, 6 months ago. The game is a lot more heavy in terms of not only the HP the enemies have, but also the damage that your current damage dealers dish out. It's a lot more of a different landscape, and just some characters cannot compete in the current edition of the game unless you have a ton of investment into not only certain team comps designed to essentially boost the damage of a character that already has low damage, which again makes it a lot more tedious to play in general, or just flat out give more investment to the character in the form of, well, Eidolons, light cone refinements, and those teammates, light cones and constellations, Eidolons, all that jazz. So who am I personally going to roll for in this patch? I try to obtain every character in the game, but that's not very realistic anymore, because for one, Loopar hasn't sponsored me in forever, and two, I just don't get that lucky in my pools ever. But if anyone I'm going for in this whole patch is going to be Castorice. The reason why is because I already have a guarantee, and she's Quantum. That's all else I really need to say. I've already invested a ton into this character's relics and teammates, so why wouldn't I go for her? Now, as for you, that's up to you to decide. If you want to roll for Acheron, you can roll for Acheron. Dr. Ratio, you can roll for Dr. Ratio. I just don't recommend them to the average Joe Schmo, because these characters have been well over outclassed in the current meta game. But the best bang for your buck here would be Anaxa or Castorice, because not only are they super good in the current meta alongside the already established damage dealers, but also they're super good in their one-off teams in those designated hypercarry teams. So overall, you can't lose with going for either or character, in my opinion. So that's it. That's the video here. I hope you got something out of this. I try to make it as informational as possible. That being said, good luck with your pulls. Don't go too heavy because we still have the fake collab on the horizon. And I will see you all at the launch of the Anniversary 3.2 patch. Peace.